Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Tuesday, August 20th, 2019. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, recession fears have the White House talking about a payroll tax cut. Meanwhile, Trump regulators are about to unwind part of the Volcker rule because banks have no history of screwing us whatsoever. The number 4 Democrat in the House now supports impeachment. Joe Biden's lead expands slightly as he pushes the hold your nose narrative. Them spending millions of dollars targeting state houses. Facebook and Twitter removing Chinese anti-Hong Kong disinformation accounts. Planned Parenthood now must totally refuse federal funding in providing health care for women across the country. New York Police Department ices ICE over the past year. The Israeli occupation gaining renewed, long overdue scrutiny. And the CEO's crocodile tears shed over shareholder value are indeed crocodile tears. And lastly, Donald Trump can't even pollute competently. All this and more on today's program, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the program. We are all here today, getting ready for vacation, which is going to start. It's going to start for me a little bit early, and then we're all going to be off next week into Labor Day. We got to get that Labor Day show, pull that baby as well. And as we say, the AM Quickie will be around all next week while we're gone. So you can get at least the, a brief, quick news headline. We are working on getting it out earlier. We hear your emails, but check it out whenever you can. 5 minutes. You could literally go to the bathroom at 9:15 once you get into work. Just play it. Nobody's going to... 5 minutes.
Or you have time to listen to it twice, once when you're really sleepy and then another time when you wake up more, which is what I did.
Right. Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I follow that, but...
Okay, cool.
Think about it. Take it in, bro.
So I think we're going to probably do 2 days of news stories in the wind-up going into vacation. We're going to get to these recession fears in a moment. I mean, even more concerning to me is the idea of a payroll tax cut, at least the way that I would imagine would be done by Donald Trump, although I wasn't terribly happy with it when Barack Obama did it as well. But first, Donald Trump is very upset that no one has provided him credit with the criminal justice reform. Part of that is probably because he's an idiot. And no one believes that he had any ideas about this. It just was something that Barack Obama hadn't done. So he was okay in signing off on what people had brought him. I mean, I think that's quite clear. We're going to see it when we talk about these cafe standards and the frustration that he's feeling that he's being outmaneuvered on trying to pollute. It's a really tough time in America where a guy can't just pollute and do it competently.
I got my best 29-year-old on the job.
Exactly. But here he is, Donald Trump, at the airport. He only does, or I guess he's in Morristown, New Jersey. He only does pressers at the airport. I wonder if that's a way for people to avoid hearing the questions. I'm serious about that. I think that's probably what it is on some level, because then he cannot be accused of not answering the question or being, it's just a statement that's floating untethered to any predicate.
Yeah, that's very smart.
It's very smart. Or maybe it's just like he doesn't, it gives him a quick out. I don't know. But here he is. You might say that Donald Trump is a poet, and he doesn't even know it.
Criminal justice reform is done. Beautiful package. Wonderful. They don't even mention my name. So stupid. So stupid. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Wow.
We got to play that one more time. I mean, it really got to appreciate the...
You guys need to take this
to put some music in the background of that or something.
You
Do we
want a
have anything?
diagram?
I am something that might work for a background for this, yes. So stupid. So stupid.
So stupid. So stupid. Thank you. Thank you.
The wind rustles the trees as the plum...
Okay, let's just play it. Let's just play it one more time. Let's
sprouts so that people in spring. So stupid.
Criminal justice reform is done. Beautiful package. Wonderful. They don't even mention my name. So stupid. So stupid. Thank you. Thank you.
This is a Japanese art form.
It's like William Carlos Williams.
The moon pierces the evening sky. No credit for me. So unfair. So unfair.
Baby shoes, good deal. Never worn.
I made deals.
Oh my gosh.
I made deals. So good for me. For me. But no credit. No credit.
Sad,
Thank
sad.
you.
Sad,
Thank
sad.
You.
Somewhere somebody is writing a coffee table book to sell at Urban Outfitters full of poems like that.
That's true, actually. But there was God, I hope not. I actually think anybody who does that really should be arrested. Frankly.
For copyright.
Yeah.
For copyright infringement.
That's a good, for copy.
Exactly.
I think
they should be. I think they should be put into the Jimmy Fallon gulag. And just sort of. All right, so here is. Speaking of so stupid. Here is the five. Fox is the five, and this guy Greg Gutfeld feels like he's been sort of sidelined during the Trump years because. I don't know. Yeah, exactly.
There's dumber people there.
What do you need the guy for?
Well, what do you need the guy for? And I think he also just sort of realized, like, I can sit here and just cash checks. I don't need to go out on a limb for this guy. But there's nothing that gets a conservative, even ones who are never Trumpers or maybe never Trumpers or secretly never Trumpers or Trump queasy or just not Trump the support. There's nothing that can get a conservative riled more than the idea of people just not letting go of this whole slavery thing and race stuff.
The problem. So why are they doing it? Is because...
Oh, pause it. I should just say, he's, of course, referring to the outrageous publication of the 19, I guess, I don't know how to...
It's a series.
Yeah.
It's a multimedia series. Yeah.
Which basically covers the implications of slavery and tracks it through the years, obviously, in terms of the institutions that slavery built and the politics and the economics, all of which we are, of course, in some measure or another living with today because, of course, we are. Because it's like we live with the implications of the railroads that were built 150, 200 years ago. I mean, the idea that you could have such a huge part of your population at that time driving the economy of the entire country in many respects, and it not have any implications on institutions, on the way the society is assembled. Never mind the descendants of both the slaves and the slave owners.
Writing about slavery in America.
And
so
there's
unfair.
so much data on this. I mean, but still, it's so obnoxious to keep bringing it up.
The problem, so why are they doing this? Is because racism is a quantity where in the media the demand exceeds the supply. So they're going to have to keep creating this. They're going to have to keep doing this. And to your point, that slave story, the slave article was probably, I didn't read it, but I'm assuming it was probably well researched. It was probably well done, but I didn't read it. But now my assumptions are this is all part of a greater narrative to paint Donald Trump as racist. So I'm going to look at everything they do as somehow artificially constructed to demonize somebody. And it's not going to stop. It's going to get worse. And we have to admit, this country...
Pause it for 1 second. I want you to just assess what this guy just said. He starts by saying there is a demand to hear about racism that exceeds the amount of racism that exists. And that's why they've got to go all the way back to slavery to find racism, to transport it into the future. In other words, they've got to write about history.
It's like doing a remake.
Right, exactly. But
racism
again,
too.
This is a complete denial of the implications of this structural racism that, of course, we know was governmentally promoted. Well, I mean, federally government, through World War II, post in terms of things like home ownership, but throughout the country by state governments well into the 60s. That's why you needed a Voting Rights Act. That's why you need a Civil Rights Act. And never mind the implications in terms of society and what people do privately in private business and whatnot. But so just that premise in and of itself, the idea that there's a demand to read about racism, but there's no racism. And even if there was no racism, what he considers to be racism, the idea that it has no implications now is ridiculous. But then he goes on to say, I haven't read it. I'm sure it's well done, but it makes me feel like it's an attack on Trump, which is basically him saying Trump's a racist. So therefore, anything that has to be written about race, even though I haven't read it, I assume is an attack on Trump. And because I'm paid professionally and probably also feel this way, broadly speaking, which is why I got paid ultimately and found myself in this position, to defend this stuff, I've got to now.
To paint Donald Trump as racist. So I'm going to look at everything they do as somehow artificially constructed to demonize somebody. And it's not going to stop. It's going to get worse. And we have to admit, this country over time gets less racist. Do you think we're more racist now than we were in the 60s or the 50s or the 1860s? It's getting better, but they don't like that story. Things are going so well that they need to demonize everybody.
Pause it. This is the amazing thing that he's so clueless about. The reason why we read this in the paper today is because it's getting better. It is because you could not have this analysis 50 or 60 years ago because we were that racist. The fact that it's in the paper is indicative of the fact that racism, to the extent that racism can get better. But I understand what he's saying, that our society is less racist. But it's still racist, A. B, even if it wasn't, why wouldn't we want to read about this? I mean, as society gets less racist, it gives us the opportunity to actually deal and digest with these problems. And there are problems. They were problems at the founding of our country. And
do you remember the stat on you can do voting predictions based off of concentration?
Oh yes. Slave
ownership.
This is from Deep Roots. This is from a book that we interviewed on the pro. You can go back. They have gone back and done a county by county analysis, and they can predict. They can predict voting and all sorts of different political implications based upon the ratio of slaves to white people in any given county. They can only predict it in terms of how white people are going to vote. They can't do it in terms of black people because black people didn't have any vote or political will throughout the vast majority of that period of time. But the fact that we can have these conversations now, that we can have a newspaper, is indicative on some level of progress that we've made in terms of race. We have obviously a long, long way to go.
Also, going to go out on a limb and say we might be backsliding a little.
I almost think that like it's wrong even to look at it as backsliding, as if we're almost on a linear path, because I don't think we've ever been on a linear path. And I don't think I think it's just a question of where it is and how aware we are at any given point. And I mean, I know what you're saying, and I think maybe it's worse now than it was 10 years ago, maybe. But in some ways, maybe not. I think maybe this is like, it's like when your scab heals over and begins to itch intensely. You know, there are periods of time where things hurt more or less. But I think that the reason why we have a Donald Trump is because on some level, racism had diminished, and then it tightens its grip because it feels like it's, people are losing even more because society is becoming in some ways, more egalitarian. Not in all ways.
Does he not want us to mark the 400-year anniversary of slaves on this continent?
Oh, you're just doing that.
Yeah. It's a giant subtweet at
I don't
Trump.
remember anybody doing this at the 300th anniversary.
Yeah, it's not like it's 377 or something and they're really stretching it.
I mean, but why did they have to pick that day? Couldn't they have picked a different one to have the anniversary from? Why the 1619? Why couldn't they have just done it from like when the first plantation opened?
It's very, I mean,
it's
very insulting.
Can you just
Trump
imagine though,
you
like,
have to frame
right? I mean,
and
but
it's right.
imagine,
It's 100%
imagine
right.
like how hard it is to show up at work and be like, I've got to come up with an angle on this. I'm not going to read it. I haven't read it. I'm going to cop to not reading it. I'm just going to say, like, it makes me feel like it's an attack on Donald Trump because they're talking about slavery.
It's not a good look.
That's, wow, sad.
Sad.
So sad. So sad. Stupid.
Didn't
Thank
read
you.
the article.
Thank you.
Stupid.
Folks, as you can see, it was funny last night. I was shaving. I was like, we haven't had a Harry's ad in a long time. And I'm like, well, that makes sense. They've been one of our longest advertisers, if not the longest advertiser we've had, short of Just Coffee. And they don't know that we have a bunch of new listeners. But there it is. The next day I show up, clean shaven, and I didn't even have any type of, I think that whole thing, grow a beard, got to me yesterday. But as you know, a lot of guys buy travel disposables when you travel this summer. You don't have to sacrifice quality for price. You can join the 10 million people who have joined and tried Harry's. Right now, you can go to harrys.com/majority report and claim a special offer. But first, understand Harry's delivers high-quality, travel-friendly shave supplies at a great low price. Just $2 a blade. Keep prices low. They cut out the middleman by purchasing a world-class blade factory in Germany. And now they can provide great quality at factory direct prices. For me, I love the ergonomic shape of the handle. It's understated. It doesn't look like I'm, got a utility belt on, basically, like other razors. The blades are incredibly sharp and they're narrow because I've got a little bit of a nose issue. This summer, you can refresh your wallet. Oh, well, of course, they're also not nearly as expensive as those other guys. Refresh your wallet and your face with a Harry's trial set. It comes with this, the ergonomic handle I just mentioned, the 5-blade razor with a lubricating strip and a trimmer blade for a close shave. That's the part that I like, that trimmer blade. The rich lathering shave gel that will leave you smelling great. Got a bottle of that right in the bathroom there every time I got to hit it, maybe, just in case. And a travel blade cover to keep your razor dry and easy on the go. Go to harrys.com/Majority Report. Redeem your trial set there. harrys.com Majority Report to redeem your offer. Let them know I sent you to help support the show. Oh, and it's back to school time. Very close. Very close. And now is the time. A lot of folks are trying to make sure they're be able to put their best foot forward. Schools come back. Breakouts do not have to. With America's #1 acne brand, Proactiv has helped fight acne for almost 20 years. Kelly, she doesn't mind me saying, is a big Proactiv, or occasionally. She says she's been using it on and off from high school. She says the formula has improved over the years, but the ideas remain the same. It's a great program of skincare that gives you short and long-term results. The best acne fighting product that doesn't require a prescription, and it's been that way for a long time. She says, I have sensitive skin. Proactiv's program has made my skin smoother and clearer without causing redness or peeling. Now they've introduced their next generation acne treatment system called ProactivMD. It contains adapalene, which apparently is a dermatologist recommended topical retinoid.
It's a very detailed email from Kelly.
Well, no, this part is, she didn't know about this part. But she's just talking about in general Proactiv.
How well it's worked for her.
This is for treatment of mild to moderate acne. It's the first prescription strength retinoid that is FDA approved. And apparently it works by affecting the growth of cells and decreasing inflammation. Kelly goes on to say it's the perfect time of the year to start Proactiv for many people because school's starting up. Only takes a few weeks to achieve noticeable differences in your skin. And she says it always helped her confidence. Now we have a back-to-school offer from Proactiv you can't get anywhere else. With your ProactivMD order, you'll also get Proactiv's on-the-go bag, which features their T-Zone oil absorber, the body acne wipes, and the Green Tea Moisturizer for free. That's close to $100 value. And you get free shipping and a 60-day money-back guarantee. Go to proactiv.com/majority. That's Proactiv, PROACTIV.com/majority to order. Make the first day back at school the best day ever. All right, let's get into... I should also tell you, folks, go to our... I don't want to play this now. But go to our Instagram account. Sign up, MajorityReport.fm on Instagram. MajorityReport.fm on Instagram. We'll put a link in our podcast feed. You're going to see one of... It is, I would say, I don't know that I've ever seen a video that mentions the name Sam that got the reaction that this video got. I saw people in the feed like spitting up their coffee, people just writing WTF. In fact, when Dorsey sent it to me from our Instagram account, that was my response, was like, what the F is this? People are like, I thought it was a deep fake.
There's a lot of deep fake paranoia.
A lot of deep fake paranoia. Check it out. Tommy Lauren, folks. I want to just dispel the rumors right now. We've never even met. But sometimes right is right, even though she is associated with these conservatives. And sometimes you just can't help but speak the truth. So check it out on our Instagram account. All right, let's get into the recession fears. We talked about this briefly yesterday. The yield curve has gone inverse, or was briefly. It doesn't seem to have maintained. 75% of economists surveyed think that we'll be in a recession by 2021. I don't know. It's a very weird time because in the past, generally the news media was relentless about denying that we're in a recession because so much of the money was being made on the run up to the stock market, and so many people were making money off of that. Everywhere you turned on television news, it was all stock market updates.
Yeah, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy too, right?
Well, that they think it does, but I'm not convinced that it does. But they think it does, and to a certain extent, like the yield curve being inverse or inverse yield curve is a function of what investors perceive as what they perceive is things are going. But, we don't know if they are just imagining it or they're looking at signs that tell them. But the White House is looking at different policies in which to deal with it. And we're in sort of a bad situation to deal with a recession. It's so bad that Donald Trump is even having to make excuses for his top economist who he sent out yesterday. You'll recall that we were observing, we were noticing that there were certain characteristics that Larry Kudlow was displaying when he was on TV.
Like optimism.
Big optimistic, Chuck, that.
And possibly stroke. But I'm not clear what it was. But somebody said to Donald Trump, apparently, there were reports that maybe Larry Kudlow was drunk on TV yesterday.
Hey, Sam Seder, you ever write a piece called Sex in the Country?
There's reporting in CNN that Larry Kudlow may be leaving at some point.
Well, I hope not. I love Larry Kudlow. I think he's done a fantastic job. He has been going through health problems, as you know. But I watched him this morning. He was terrific. I think Larry's a fantastic guy, but I haven't heard that at all.
No. Here we go. We're about a day or two away from Larry Kudlow, I think, being fired.
Oh, even a day, not even a week.
I like how Trump's main judgment of his performance is how well he does on the TV shows.
Yeah, it's on the TV show. He's doing fine. I mean, aside from the major health problems. So they are contemplating cutting the payroll tax. Payroll tax, as you know, funds Social Security and Medicare. You pay about, I think it's 6.2% out of your paycheck. Your employer pays 6.2% on the other side, on top of your paycheck. And this, you are subject to the payroll taxes up to about $132,000, I think it is now. Aside from the fact that we should have the cap should be blown out. Some people call for a donut hole, fine, whatever, but we're just capturing far less of the nation's income that way. Nevertheless, there have been deliberations in the White House, according to the Washington Post. Even though deliberations about the payroll tax cut were held Monday, the White House released a statement disputing the idea was actively under consideration. Business spending, apparently, in the economy has pulled back. RV sales are down, whatever that means. Well, there's some people have. Everybody has a different thing that they think is an indication of an economy going south. The last time the payroll tax was cut was in 2011 and 2012 under the Obama administration. This was in the time of a deep recession that had followed in the wake of the financial crisis. Frankly, I was against it then. I'm against it now. The difference, I would imagine, we don't know any of the details of how the Trump administration would do it. I'm sure it would be done in a much more problematic way. During 2011 and 2012, the payroll tax was dropped from 6.2% to 4.2%. The idea was to encourage spending. Now, a lot of people think it didn't work because people didn't notice. George Bush sent a check to everybody, which probably amounted to less money, but everybody knew it was a check. And so they went out and spent that extra money as opposed to doing whatever, not being aware that they had the extra money. Although I haven't seen any data on that. I just remember contemporaneously that was something that people would talk about. The cut, when it was imposed, had an automatic sunset provision, and by 2013, it was back up to 6.2%. Why is this important? Because the payroll tax funds Social Security and Medicare. Now, under the Obama administration, because there was so much blowback from progressives who said you cannot cut the Social Security tax because you're going to underfund the Social Security trust fund and the system itself broadly. And this is going to be an excuse to cut later on. So what they did is they cut the taxes on Social Security and the payroll, but they made up for that difference in the general fund, and it just got added to the deficit. I don't think that Donald Trump is going to do it that way. I think Mick Mulvaney is going to see this as an opportunity to starve Social Security from resources, and which will ultimately be an argument to cut Social Security benefits. It's highly problematic. It's also, the other problem that we have is there's no opportunity to deal with a recession. Or let me put it another way. There's a limited opportunity to deal with a recession because the way that you deal with a recession is to cut interest rates. But at this point, our interest rates are around 2.25% or something to that effect. I'm not 100% sure, but they're low. And when they're low, it means that you don't have room to lower them. There is no magic number. It's all relative on some level. So there's only so much cash you can inject into the economy through monetary policy at this point because we're just not that. Interest rates are just not that high to begin with. The other problem is, of course, is that these people are not going to spend. They're going to cut taxes. They know they can't cut taxes for rich people anymore. And we know that as far as tax cuts go, the only ones that are effective are for middle-class people in terms of juicing the economy. And even then, it's not the most efficient way. The most efficient way is to spend, is to actually put money in people's pockets, and you could direct where it goes. The problem with the Trump tax cuts, not just from a wealth inequality standpoint, not just in terms of a plutonomy and then a plutocracy standpoint, were that giving money to rich people does not help the economy. Giving money to people living in poverty, giving money to people living paycheck to paycheck, giving money to people who barely save any money, that helps the economy because they turn around and they spend those dollars. But when you give money to rich people, it's not like they have new things to buy. They just use that money to create more money. They buy stocks. They inject capital maybe into some companies, but there's no efficiency involved in that. So there's just not the same opportunities to deal with a recession if we do hit one. Donald Trump is just trying to figure out a way right now to punt this into 2021. Either he'll be president for a second term, he'll escape prosecution. If he's fortunate, he'll die in office. Or it'll be a Democrat that takes the hit on the economy. And believe me, it'll be a disaster. The way they'll go after the Democrat, whoever it is, it'll be a disaster. They will say, you have no money. People in Congress, in the Senate, they will say, we have no money to do these plans. We have no money to do this. We have no money to do that. It's a real concern. But it's a very weird media time, too, because I just don't recall, and I've only lived through, I don't know, 3 or 4 recessions as an adult, maybe even less. I don't recall this perspective by the media, one where they're not in full-on denial. But
man, if Bernie or maybe Warren isn't president when the recession hits, it's going to be so much worse.
I think it's going to be, I don't know. I mean, I think it depends on what you mean by worse.
Like, they're the only ones who would do what they need to do in order to help us out of it.
The problem is, I mean, the question is going to be, can they get the Senate and the House to do what needs to be done? There's no president who's going to be able to do it alone. There's just not. And they're going to need the Senate and the House. So I don't know. There may be, I don't know. I could come up with like 5 different scenarios. I don't know if there's a way to tell. I think you go with the president you want to have and deal with it. But it's not inconceivable to me that a Senate would be hostile to Bernie Sanders and try and clip them more than Joe Biden will come in and be like, I'll give you a huge tax cut again, or whatever it is. I don't know. But it's going to be ugly. And just in case that there's a desire to make it even uglier, the FDIC board apparently is voting this morning, and maybe they've already voted. They're going to roll back part of the Volcker rule, which basically prohibited banks largely from placing their own bets. They could do some things that were sort of more like best practices, certain hedges, certain currency purchases, if it was, to protect the assets of the bank. But they no longer were able to use deposits and to do their own sort of hedge funds, and basically just gambling with other people's money. And now they're going to have basically more latitude to do that. This was a big problem back in 2008, but that was so long ago. Who could remember? Who's around to remember such things? Basically, it uses the banks as, or I should say, the depositors as a backstop. We'll use their money that's in our bank accounts, not just for loaning out in, safe, bland, vanilla loans, but now we'll also get in there and go to the roulette table. It's all FDIC insured. So the taxpayers will just have to pay for it if we blow it. I mean, that's basically where we're at. This is a rule that went into effect 4 years ago. That's a long time. You get a little bored of those things after a while. So that's where we are in terms of the economy. And of course, unleashing the banks right now is a little bit of seems a little bit terrifying and irresponsible, but
it'll be fine.
Everything's going to be fine.
Don't worry about it.
Let's just get the Fed rates down to about 0.25.
Records all over the place.
Meanwhile, speaking of the presidential elections, new polling's out. Biden's lead seems to be durable for the time being. I think we will have a much better sense within 2 months. I still stand by my prediction that he will be third in the polls by the end of October. 2 more debates, I think, should be able to do it. People paying attention should be able to do it. Increasingly, though, I will admit this. I may be wrong about the where he is in the polls, but my concerns about it have increased. When you are in August, a year and a half out from the general election, and you are pitching yourself. Now, granted, this is not Joe Biden pitching himself. This is his wife, who's a politician's wife. She's not freelancing here, folks. When you are pitching yourself as the candidate you may not like, but is probably the best, you've got a problem. Like when you are conceding publicly as a pitch that many of you do not like the policies and know that he's not good on this stuff, you're basically, one, you're depressing your own supporters by making them wonder, like, wait a second, what? But you're also basically just saying, we want the least energized, the least committed, the least enthusiastic base of support we could possibly muster for this. And that's going to carry us over the victory, over the winning, the finish line.
We want idiots that vote.
But she's not even, it's worse than that. She wants smart people who are willing to suck it up. And now, I understand on some level if you're saying this as a last-ditch effort in the general election. I get it. But we're in the middle of the primary and she's having to say this.
But she's saying like that's their base, is like people who don't they're not paying attention to healthcare as much as.
So yes, your candidate might be better on, I don't know, healthcare than Joe is. But you've got to look at who's going to win this election. And maybe you have to swallow a little bit and say, okay, I sort of personally like so-and-so better. But your bottom line has to be that we have to. Because I know that not all of you are committed to my husband. And I respect that. But I want you to think about your candidate, his or her electability, and who's going to win this race. And so if you're looking at that, you've got to look at the polls. And, a lot of times I say, polls don't mean anything, But if they're consistent and they're consistently saying the same thing, I think you can't dismiss that. I mean, you all deal with facts. So I think if your goal, I know my goal is to beat Donald Trump, we have to have someone who can beat him. And so if you look at the polls, if you look at Joe with his record with independents, we can't just have Democrats who are going to win. We have to include everybody. Our party has to be more inclusive, which means we have to go to independents and say, join us. We have to go to Republicans and say, okay, you're a Republican, but you can't tell me that your children are proud of the president, of the things he says.
I'll pause it. Wait a second. This part is even just the most reprehensible. I have two words for Dr. Biden in terms of this. You can't tell your children. Jason Chaffetz. It took him about a week and a half to go from I can't look my daughter in the eye after he says I grabbed the vagina. I don't know why I thought that would be less likely to get demonetized than.
It's a clinical.
I can't.
After I grabbed the woman's private area, is that okay? YouTube,
private
please
area.
keep giving me.
And then
money.
a week later, the guy comes back and goes, it turns out she was cool with that. Good.
Children are proud of the president, of the things he says, and you can't, as a mother or as a father, how can you be proud of that president as a leader? And I think if you look at where Joe is in the polls in Michigan, in Ohio, in Pennsylvania, where we're both from, he's leading all the other candidates. So yes, your candidate might be better on, I don't know, healthcare than Joe is. But you've got to look at who's going to win this election. And maybe you have to swallow a little bit and say, okay, I sort of personally like
Wait, is she repeating herself again?
Actually, I think they spliced the
Wait,
clip.
Oh, okay.
Did she just admit that her husband is bad on healthcare?
Yes.
My wife
I
says
mean,
she don't like me.
There's a
but
lot
I
of people
win a
better
race.
than him. I mean, look, the reality is that the polls show that at least the top 3 candidates could beat Donald Trump. But we also know that the polls showed that Hillary Clinton could beat Donald Trump. And to the extent that we can draw any parallels from 2016 to now, I've said many times before, there was a perfect storm. There's a lot of different things that matched up that were really, that were within and without Hillary Clinton's ability to control that impacted the final outcome of that election. But the one thing that we can say that is true and that I think allowed it to be as close as it was the lack of enthusiasm for her candidacy, broadly speaking. And to have a candidate for whom the enthusiasm is so low, let's make it clear here. Like, there were obviously hardcore Hillary Clinton supporters. There are not hardcore Joe Biden supporters. Like, there is a far greater deficit. If their appeal at this point is to concede that his policies stink.
Even his own wife is not a hardcore Biden supporter, it seems.
We have many friends
Tepid.
who are
Very
Uzbeks, and they're good
It's
people.
like Jeb's mom
tepid.
energy.
Total Jeb's mom energy. It's like sometimes he's incontinent, sometimes he urinates on himself while reminiscing
think
about
that-
running with Strom Thurmond, but he still pulls well.
Okay, well, bless me, Father, if I have sinned.
Do you think that he goes home to dinner and says, like, sweetheart, is there something you want to tell me? And she just goes, oh, shut up, Joe.
I think he says, sweetheart, go to...
Go to Joe 30330 and help me.
Man, we are straight up making fun of somebody going senile.
Oh, I
It's
don't
his
think
fault
that's
for
true.
running.
Oh, I do.
That's true.
And I don't have a problem with it. I'm just noting it.
Public figure.
I don't care.
No, I don't think.
But the
I mean,
whole, I mean, look, if the whole argument hinges on polling, Bernie Sanders dominating Trump in the polls without all of the potential downsides you're identifying.
Yeah, it seemed like she was using his winning in the polls for the primary as evidence that he could beat Trump.
No,
Did I hear that wrong?
Aren't all 3 top
Warren-
candidates are
No,
beating
the-
Trump?
All of them beat Trump. None
In,
of
like,
them
Even
Texas.
Harris, I
spread.
think.
I think some of them are beating him in
The
Texas.
one that
yeah.
not beating him straight up is Buttigieg. Buttigieg loses, and then the spread gets smaller and smaller. It's like 8 to 10 Bernie Biden, then like 4 to 5 Warren, then like 2 to 3 Harris.
They have to be beating him by enough that they could still lose. Otherwise, it's not interesting.
There you go. So, all right, let's take a look here. What we got? That Joe stuff really, I think, is a little bit. It's a little bit disturbing. It makes me more and more nervous.
Sort
frankly.
of depressing.
It's like seeing a train go down tracks. That
From the
the
very
bridge is
beginning,
out.
I have not been a fan of Joe Biden's, but it really is only since just before the first debate where I started to get that feeling of like, wait a second, this may be worse than that.
People don't learn lessons.
Well, yeah, I don't know.
Don't bring up lessons.
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
We should explore that for a little while.
Lessons?
Let's take up some time.
But a function of politics, not lessons.
All right.
I mean, I think that there's I don't know. Those numbers for him, though, are going to be very resilient. And the disturbing pattern is that he gets, like, not dramatic, but he seems to get, like, these little drops after debates. And then a couple weeks later, he's bounces right back up.
The thing to keep in mind is that we are still in an era where vast majority of people are not remotely paying attention to any of this. The vast majority of people.
100%.
And so things like name recognition go very far. And I would say they probably help Bernie to a certain extent, name recognition, but it helps, Biden the most in terms of just like the names that people recognize. And as people pay more attention, I think we will see maybe some changes. I hope, but we'll see. All right, let's take a look at this. Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar are back in the news. This is, we're going to hear a lot from these folks for the next year because to a large extent, this is part of the electoral strategy in 2018 of the Republican Party, which is to demonize women of color and make sure that everyone understands that the Democratic Party is the women of color party. And so let's just start. Yesterday, there was a press conference at the Minnesota State House. Both Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar spoke. Here is Rashida Tlaib talking about her experience in Palestine as a young girl.
As a young girl visiting Palestine to see my grandparents and extended family, I watched as my mother had to go through dehumanizing checkpoints. Even though she was a United States citizen and proud American, I was there when my city was in a terrible car accident, and my cousins and I cried so she could have access to the best hospitals, which were in Jerusalem. I remember shaking with fear when checkpoints appeared in the small village of Bet Or el-Foka, tanks and guns everywhere. I remember visiting East Jerusalem with my then husband and him escorted off the bus, although he was a United States citizen, just so security forces could harass him. All I can do as my city's granddaughter, as the granddaughter of a woman who lives in occupied territory, is to elevate her voice by exposing the truth the only way I know how. As my Detroit public schools teachers taught me, by humanizing the pain of oppression.
And then Ilhan Omar came up and spoke more specifically about what this country can do, this country being the United States, to deal with the injustice that is the Israeli apartheid.
Fortunately, we in the United States have a constructive role to play. We give Israel more than $3 million in aid every year. This is predicated on their being an important ally in the region and the only democracy in the Middle East. But denying visit to duly elected members of Congress is not consistent with being an ally, and denying millions of people freedom of movement or expression or self-determination is not consistent with being a democracy. We must be asking, as Israel's ally, the Netanyahu government stop the expansion of settlements on Palestinian land and ensure full rights for Palestinians if we are to give them aid.
Now, before some of you send me an email telling me that I'm a self-hating Jew, and why is it that Tlaib and Ilhan Omar and we on the show, why do we criticize Israel when Saudi Arabia is so horrible? Why do we criticize Israel when Iran is so horrible or Syria is so horrible? Let me tell you what emails I never get. Why do you criticize the United States when there are so many other countries that are just as bad or worse? Like what? Because the point of criticizing, look, I don't know if South Africa was the most oppressive regime in the world at the time. Saudi Arabia is still probably pretty bad back then too. But the point being, because one, I have personally just far more invested in Israel than I do in Saudi Arabia emotionally. Two, we give obviously $3 billion of aid to Israel. They are far more interconnected in our politics in many respects, at least publicly, than the Saudis. To the extent that the Saudis are, we criticize them. This is the notion that Israel is unique in getting criticism is a silly one in terms of the West or from where we sit.
Well,
I mean,
we
hold them to higher standards because we consider them the only democracy in the Middle East.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think we could do that one ironically and as a joke anymore. But I mean, I'll acknowledge. I mean, look, I have a lot more emotional investment in Saudi Arabia, so that's extremely difficult for me to talk about that elegant monarchy there and how the standards have fallen. But I think that, one is all the reasons that you outlined, absolutely. And even though we could say on a relative scale, there's no doubt that being in Saudi Arabia would, in the aggregate, be worse in many respects. Although, frankly, I don't know if you're Palestinian, but certainly if you're even an Arab as a second-class citizen inside 67 borders. But there is something very specific and very unique about apartheid conditions and about having a system that specifically administers two entirely different sets of rules for people based on their ethnic identity. And I mean that in some respects that is actually very unique in the world. Apartheid South Africa was unique. The Jim Crow South was unique.
Right.
Israel is unique. Western Sahara is unique. And I think now clearly Kashmir is becoming increasingly unique. And having a set of conditions like that if, literally roads for different people,
right, that is
entirely
so
different justice
right,
systems,
right.
That is radically unique.
There you go. Meanwhile, I've been saying for years that Israel is going to lose the Democratic Party, and it is. And they, I think, have come to this realization. They don't seem to care about it. What's fascinating is that now critique of Israel is becoming more and more mainstreamed and is becoming less and less taboo. Peter Beinart, who 15, 20 years ago was in a radically different place when it came to Israel. Part of it is, I think part of it, frankly, is also the past 15 years in terms of what has happened in Israel, 15 to 20 years, has been dramatic in many ways since Rabin was assassinated. I think there has been sort of a growing awareness in the center left in this country that Israel has gone further and further off the rails as in terms of its politics and its leadership, and in terms of where the population is heading. And Peter Beinart, who was a big Iraq war advocate and then subsequently made what I think is probably the most legitimate of all the mea culpas, and then actively working towards fixing what he missed. It wasn't just like, I got that one wrong, but I'm going back at it. It wasn't like a Larry Kudlow, like, okay, yeah. Nobody bats 1,000. He actively dedicated himself to understanding why he got it wrong and what he didn't, what his predispositions towards that region were. And here he is on CNN in what I think is probably one of the most dramatic arguments about the injustice that's happening in Israel that that you could see on cable news. This is a big deal to see on cable news. Israel critiqued in this manner by someone who is considered mainstream by cable news. They're not bringing somebody on, you know, because they're wearing a funny hat at a rave party, you know, and protesting on stilts.
That he's talking about is called MIFTA, which is an organization that in the past has published articles on their website using phrases like blood libel, which in the past on their website has praised Palestinians who've carried out attacks against Israelis. And this was the organization that was involved with the planning of that trip. Now, you heard Ilhan Omar refer to that obliquely in her statement, but is that a type of organization that you should be connected with as a U.S. member of Congress?
Palestinians don't have to be saints in order to deserve the basic rights that all of us take for granted, right? MIFTA has said things that I disagree with. They made an anti-Semitic statement that they apologized for. The point is, when you go there, I say this as an American Jew. My children go to Jewish day school. I lead services in an Orthodox synagogue. Judaism is the center of my life. The first time I went to spend time with Palestinians in the West Bank, it was a shattering experience. The only thing I could imagine would be similar for American would be going to visit the Jim Crow South. When you see people living under the control of the state with no rights, they cannot become citizens. They cannot vote for the state that controls their lives. They do not have free movement. They need a pass to move from city to city. They live under a military legal system. The consequences are more brutal than we can imagine sitting here. So, do I agree with MIFTA? Of course not. I had a close friend who was killed in a suicide bombing. But Palestinians don't. You could have made the same argument if you went to visit SNCC and said, oh, they were connected with communists. Some of their people have made anti-white statements. The point is, what Ilhan Omar said is the most important point. People need to go and see for themselves. I've never seen anyone who's gone and seen for themselves and not been transformed by the experience.
That, I think, is true and apolitical, that it is worth going to Israel, worth going to the West Bank so you can see for yourself. You get a real sense of the situation on the ground. Rich Lowry, on the subject of MIFTA, the other side of that is that there has been a congressional trip that was led by MIFTA before, and the Israeli government let it happen. Now, I know it was before the actual law was passed, but they didn't need a law to keep people out if they didn't want to, but they allowed it to happen before. Now they're not, and claiming it's because of this organization.
Yeah, well, obviously the proximate cause here was the Trump tweet, which highlighted this and made it a major issue. But there is a law that allows Israel to ban foreigners who support the BDS movement, to isolate and delegitimize Israel. It's been not applied against members of Congress before. It's been applied against French politicians, against EU politicians. But these are strong supporters of the BDS movement. They are not honest brokers. We wouldn't afford a white nationalist organization the leeway that Peter is giving this organization. Oh, they're not saints. This is an anti-Semitic group that supported terrorism, supports blowing up innocent civilians and children. And no matter what you think of the dispute between the Palestinians and Israel, that is an illegitimate tactic that no one should associate with advocates of.
Want a quick response to that, Peter? Then I want to bring
Sure. Hannah Ashrawi is actually very well known as a nonviolent activist, been a critic of the Palestinian Authority, one of the most important Palestinian feminists. There are many Palestinians who believe that Palestinians have the right to use violence because of the daily violent oppression they feel. I disagree with them. I believe in only nonviolent protest. But the point is, every time any Palestinian leader or any Palestinian organization tries to expose what happens, this is exactly what happens. People try to discredit them because they don't want to talk about the real issue. The real issue is an absolutely indefensible denial of basic human rights.
What's that have to do with supporting terrorism? I mean, no one has any problem with harshly criticizing Israel. That's fine. But you don't support blowing up innocent people. That's just a bottom line. Something we all should agree on.
The purpose behind focusing on this is to try to distract attention from the reality on the ground, which is funded by American tax dollars. Our tax dollars blow up the homes of people who cannot get permits to build because they're non-citizens under military law.
Would this be your standard for a white nationalist organization? They say some racist things. They support some terrorism.
With all due respect,
that's okay.
You have not been there and seen this on the ground. I know Hanan Ashrawi. She is nothing close to a white nationalist. She is someone seeking freedom.
But then why does the organization publish things supporting terrorism?
Rich, I disagree with violent resistance.
but why do they?
It is because a lot of Palestinians believe that because they are subject to daily violence of a system which denies them basic rights, they have the right to respond violently. I disagree with them. But an African American who supported violence against the United States under slavery or Jim Crow, that did not excuse their denial of basic rights because I disagree with the tactic they were using to resist it.
I mean, it's fine to harshly criticize Israel and the occupation.
Pause
but
it.
I don't think anyone's.
Is that true? Is it true that it's fine to harshly criticize Israel and the occupation? Isn't this entire? I mean, look at the chyron underneath. I mean, this whole news segment is a function of why it's wrong for Omar Hillan and Talib and anybody else for criticizing Israel in this way. I mean, the whole premise of why this is on the news is not because of Mifta. Nobody watching this knows who Mifta is. The whole premise is like they're criticizing Israel. Completely disingenuous, but go.
Using to resist it.
I mean, it's fine to harshly criticize Israel and the occupation, but I don't think anyone's be associated with a group that supports terrorism. And this isn't black or white. I mean, they publish this stuff. No one's forcing them to publish
years
this
ago,
stuff.
there were certain statements on their website. Hana Nasrawi has devoted her life as a nonviolent activist to opposing an oppression which none of us does not accord with the values that any of us believe in as Americans.
So she doesn't control her own organization and what it publishes?
Rich, why don't you try spending a little bit of time focusing on the fact that almost $4 billion of U.S. aid is used to put children in detention.
You're the one distracting from the issue. I'm asking
No, this is the issue. You're distracting from the issue because National Review, just as National Review defended apartheid, and just as you defended segregation, you now defend Israel's oppression of Palestinian basic rights. It's a tradition for you guys.
Look, if an organization supports
you
terrorism,
finally forced Peter Beinart to be uncivil and correct.
Yeah.
No, that's so important. That's all it is. And every argument they have is whataboutism. It's also just the fundamental dishonesty that you pointed out, that of course you're not allowed to talk about the Israeli occupation. And now it's just all of a sudden seamlessly moved into this lie about this organization. And also, frankly, like, the distinction between we have to have some universal standards. You have to say that there are certain actions that states or groups should not undertake, period, or else we just don't have any ground for anything. But as a broader proposition, the notion that Rich Lowry has anything to say about how the Palestinians conduct their struggle violently, non-violently, or otherwise, I mean, that, and they've been saying this for years, by the way.
Well, that's the point.
This is so demented.
Of U.S. aid is used to put children in detention.
You're the one distracting from the issue. I'm asking you.
This is the issue. You're distracting from the issue because National Review, just as National Review defended apartheid, and just as you defended segregation, you now defend Israel's oppression of Palestinian basic rights. It's a tradition for you guys.
Look, and if an organization supports terrorism, that organization should be beyond the pale.
And when Palestinians protest non-violently, right, you discredit them as well.
So you're saying that, in some sense, justifies terrorism?
Of course it doesn't justify what they want. I've said again and again, I disagree with terrorism. What I'm saying is you're trying to distract from the real issue. The real issue is American complicity in the denial of basic Palestine.
All right, we're going to leave this, guys. What's the content of your opposition mean?
We're going to leave this there.
This organization.
Rich, please go there yourself.
We're going to leave that.
Of course you won't.
It's also just, I mean, of course they won't. And of course, like, this will keep going. Like, this is all they've got. There's nothing else.
This plays into everything the Republicans want to run on, because they get the angry brown ladies, they get the evangelicals, they pump the prime for, I don't know, some right-wing dollars.
But
goes
this is also
on and
why
on.
you really can't. I mean, I'm not just so critical of the equivocating from Warren because she's not my candidate. It's because really anybody in any type of broad claim of center-left politics that still calls, that still says something like, oh, well, when Israel doesn't give them visas, they're undermining their image as a tolerant democracy. It is offensive
like the framing, as
human
opposed to like
beings are
this
in
is,
apartheid.
This is indicative
Children
of
get their
a
bones
problem that they
broken
have in
by
their society.
soldiers.
Right.
This is their governance.
Right.
And it should be offensive to every Jewish person in America that any Jews are supporting this or anyone is supporting the Trump administration somehow in our name when, you know, most of their attention is on brown people right now and putting them in camps. Once they achieve that, they're absolutely going to try to do it to us.
The Jews.
Yeah.
I mean, we become a lot less relevant, particularly once Jesus comes back. Like
There's only one
two-thirds
place
are just
in the
completely
world
chucked.
that fascism works for Jews. Israel.
There you go. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Head into the fun half, wherein we will talk a little bit more about this, get into the Fox and Friends perspective on all this. We will take your phone calls. We will take your IMs, ladies and gentlemen. All that and more. Just a reminder, your support makes this show possible. You do it. Maybe not you, but it could be you. Could be you who I'm talking to. In fact, it's time for you to do it. Go to jointhemajorityreport.com, sign up, become a member, pennies a day. You will support this program. And as a way of saying thank you, we give you this show commercial free. We give it to you. We give you extra content every day. And you keep us chugging along. Jointhemajorityreport.com. Also, if you want to check out the AM Quickie, all you got to do is subscribe to the Majority Report feed in your iTunes. Even if you're a member of the show, the member show, subscribe to iTunes on the Majority Report feed, and you'll get it. We're going to shift over to its own feed in sometime in September. But in the meantime, particularly while we're on vacation, the way to get it is going to be going into our public feed and picking it up every day. You'll get 5 minutes of news, and we're trying to get it out earlier and earlier every day. Some days are better than others, but we're working on that. Check it out. JoinTheMajorityReport.com basically funds that show at this point, too. So, also justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code Majority, get 10% off. Michael, today is Tuesday.
Indeed it is. And tonight on the Michael Brooks Show, Shahid Buttar, who is running for Congress challenging Nancy Pelosi from the left. Ben Carson used to say that's a leftist argument. He's making a leftist argument against Nancy Pelosi for Congress. We're going to be talking about particularly his views on foreign policy. Then the great Anna Kasparian joins us. We're talking about Republican initiatives against basically protests across the country and the sort of how that correlates with that really disgusting footage of the ICE truck. And then also the idea of building an inviting left a little bit. We'll explore as well. All that and much more. Patreon.com/TMBS, Michael Brooks Show on YouTube, where thank you for cracking our first 70,000 subs.
Jamie.
This week on the Antifada, out tomorrow, we have on friend of the show, Molly Crabapple, to talk about her arrest at the Amazon protest last weekend, as well as the protests in Puerto Rico and what's going on there. That's out tomorrow. And out still from last week, we have comedian Simone Norman talking about the uses and abuses of irony, the pitfalls of normie socialism, and why you should not be a socially conservative social democrat with tanky aesthetics. Patreon.com/theantifada.
All right, quick break. Oh, wait a second.
2 new literary hangovers for patrons on George Orwell's time as an imperial cop in Burma.
And folks, with America's #1 acne brand, Proactiv has helped fight acne for almost 25 years. I think I remember my sisters using that stuff.
Wow.
Now they have their next generation of acne treatment. It's called ProactivMD. It is dermatologist recommended. It's apparently a topical retinoid, which I vaguely remember that term, retinoid. And it's used to treat mild to moderate acne. Check it out. Order now, you'll receive Proactiv's on-the-go bag, which has got their T-Zone oil absorber, their body acne wipes, and their Green Tea Moisturizer for free. That's a $100 value, ladies and gentlemen. And you get free shipping and a 60-day money-back return. Go to proactiv.com/majority. That's Proactiv, PROACTIV.com/majority. Check it out. See you in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Almost says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
I am a total cunt.
Can we bring back DJ Dannerky's song, please?
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Dannerky.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break for people.
That's fucking nonsense.
Hey, folks, reminder.
I do not have Parkinson's.
And the alpha males are
psych. Fuck them.
Almost says what? Almost says what?
Hell of a lot of bank. 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 All lives matter.
Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black. African. And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on! Fuck 'em. Fuck things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday! Happy birthday to me, Jew boy!
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are back. Africans are black.
Come on! Come on! Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
I just don't remember that. All right, folks. Fun half. Oh, we're going to get to phone calls today, or some, and some IMs, or some. Maybe tomorrow I'll just do all phone calls. Hello? Seriously? Maybe I will do that. I always threaten to do it, and then I never do it. I mean, I don't threaten to do it. I'm not like I don't perceive it as a threat, but I always say that stuff.
Maybe a fun experiment.
The great gaslight on IM as this weekend's Portland protests further exposed Andy Ngo as a shameless alt-right grifter and provocateur. Let's not forget how the IDW tripped over each other to platform him and amplify his narrative, painting the left as violent. Specifically, this guy, Andy Ngo, who was, where is he from? Was he from Colette?
Oh, yeah, he's written for Colette a lot.
So he got beat up, apparently, at one of these, clashes between, white civic nationalists or whatever they are, and Proud Boys and so on, and Antifa. And it was all made out to be like Antifa was attacking journalists. And particularly in all the stuff that went down in Portland, we haven't talked about it on the show. These are street fights. Like I think we mentioned that it didn't get terribly violent, but there's significant. You can find it. I'm trying to remember who did some of the more comprehensive stuff on Twitter. But Andy Ngo apparently wasn't there, but was characterizing all these events through other people's media as being in one way, and people on the ground were completely refuting what he's saying.
Christopher Mathias had a good one.
Yeah, I think that maybe is the one that I'm thinking about.
From HuffPost.
Okay, and so it's pretty dramatic. But it is just another example. I mean, here's the thing. It's hard sometimes to know whether on the right there is like a plan behind this where like the IDW guys come around and platform Andy Ngo even though he turns out to be a complete shill, or if it's just literally like such a deep-seated lack of integrity that they don't either bother to check on these things or they purposely don't check on them because they don't care. It's hard to know. Like,
it's hard to know.
There is been a, for a long time we used to ask about the Bush administration, stupid or evil? And it's also possible at times where it's both. Now, like, let's take, for instance, like Ben Shapiro here. Ben Shapiro had this to say on his show. And this is one of those perfect examples of like, does Ben Shapiro not, like, does he just simply lack the integrity? Or does he just talk without any awareness of what he's said in the past? Like, he just throw stuff off so carelessly and make these pronunciations because there's so much. He sticks his finger up in the wind, and the currents on the conservative side are so cohesive that you just got to do that quickly. You know which way the wind is blowing. You blurt it out. Boom. You move up a rung in their little social, metrics, and they get more funding. And that's what he does. And that's why he can't remember anything he said in the past. Or if he just has no integrity, and maybe I'm saying the same thing, like because he has no integrity, he doesn't have to think about what he said in the past. None of it's relevant. And that's what allows him to do this. It really is a genuine mystery to me, but it's almost like on a daily basis that the further this guy goes in his career, the more he produces in terms of an output, the more he exposes himself as a total joke. This is a guy that they called the Prince philosopher of the right, or
the cool kids philosopher.
Yeah, whatever it is. I mean, like, honestly, this is how shallow their integrity and intellect is. Here is Ben Shapiro. And he could actually be a fairly smart guy, but I think that because he lacks such integrity, that there's no rigor. Here he is making what is not even like demonstrable is almost too weak of a word to say a demonstrable untruth.
It's like setting up an alley-oop where you pass the ball to the guy and then he dunks on you.
Here is Ben Shapiro. Exactly.
Republicans impeached Bill Clinton in the 1990s. They never made a move to impeach Barack Obama, despite the myriad scandals that cropped up during his administration. I'm not aware of a single major Republican.
Pause it. Now, wait a second. I want to just go back and set the table here. He's talking about like the Trump derangement syndrome or something.
He was black, and they never impeached him for it.
Now, I don't know what the myriad of scandals were that he was talking about. Like, I really honestly don't. But just the myriad.
The myriad syndrome.
Understand, we're talking about a president in Donald Trump where he's 20, maybe more, White House officials have had to leave because of like inspector general reports, because of criminal investigations. I mean, there's nothing even that remotely, you could go back and add up various two-time presidencies and not get anything even remotely close to this.
Trump derangement syndrome. That's what you have.
But listen to where he's going with this, because this is really stunning. I mean, like, we're talking, this is not ancient history he's commenting on now.
Barack Obama, despite the myriad scandals that cropped up during his administration. I'm not aware of a single major Republican figure who said that Barack Obama was not the legitimate president of the United States, despite the fact that Democrats have claimed that George W. Bush was illegitimate. They've claimed that Donald Trump is illegitimate. So this is just not true. And doubts about Barack Obama's belief system came from Barack Obama being an extraordinarily radical figure. Barack Obama said he wanted to fundamentally transform the nature of the country. That's a pretty radical statement.
All right. Well, let's put aside how radical of a president Barack Obama was. The idea that there was no, what did he say? There was no
major Republican
figure who questioned Obama's presidency. It wasn't until someone pointed out online, like, hey, you left out Donald Trump, who was one of the top birth certificate truthers in the country, if not the top birth certificate truther. And he's a Republican president now. And so Shapiro goes on to Twitter to defend this. Because, like I say, like, they don't have, they are blessed with a lack of integrity that also gives them a lack of, like, sort of examining anything that's going on. It's a very bizarre sort of trait that they have.
And then you can retreat into pedantry.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, wait a second. Do you use an apostrophe there? That doesn't count. But he goes on and he says, Trump was a fringe character for nearly the entirety of the Obama presidency. He wasn't a Republican figure, he puts it in quotes, until he ran. Now, I don't know what Republican...
until he was aggressively sought?
Wait. I don't know what Republican figure, the word figure means, right? But this is the key. Like, I'm going to use words that could, like, that really are defined by me, right? Like, that are open. Until he ran. You can't name a single major elected Republican official during Obama's presidency who challenged the legitimacy of his presidency. Okay, so what Ben Shapiro has done, allow me to get a little bit Ben Shapiro-y, is he's postulated two assertions. One is that Donald Trump was a fringe character. He wasn't a Republican figure until he ran. Well, as you know, he ran in 2015. Here is Ben Shapiro tweeting in 2011. Why I back Donald Trump on the Ben Shapiro at big810am.com. Back in April 10th, 2011, TCOT Tea Party. That is a tweet of Ben Shapiro's talking about his radio show, why he backs Donald Trump in the 2012 presidency. Undeclared Donald Trump, who was not even a Republican figure. Now, by figure, I meant like someone who weighed over a certain, I don't know what the figure means, but he clearly was enough of a Republican figure that Ben Shapiro would dedicate an episode of his show to backing him. But maybe that's just a one-off. Oh, except for 2 days later, The Magic of Donald Trump, written by Ben Shapiro in Town Hall.
Maybe he thought he was going to run as an independent.
This is what's so funny is that Ben Shapiro does not even have, like, his whole brand is built on the notion. I mean, first he's like part of this weird kid conservative thing of like the Republican obsession with having like odd teenagers say their talking points. But he basically has a brand that's built on being a thinking person's conservative by like overwhelming college students,
right?
At
Well,
public
no
forums. No, and but I'm saying like
let me finish here on this.
Breitbart, whole career at Breitbart.
Of course,
before this,
it's absurd. In reality, the birth certificate is specifically geared towards certain political ends for Trump. This is him writing about. First, it's obviously calculated to attract the most anti-Obama segment of the conservative base. Indeed. And is already conceded if primary polling is any indicator. Second, it's designed to force Obama into defending his character. Trump has already suggested that at his best, Obama refuses to come clean to the American people. Finally, it shows Obama that if Trump is nominated, the campaign will not be a McCain-style love fest. He's writing this in 2011. Understand. He's writing this in 2011. In promotion of Donald Trump to run against Barack Obama. And explaining why this works for Republicans. Is Donald Trump the best Republican candidate for president out there? It would be tough to argue otherwise, he writes. This guy claims he's not even a Republican figure until 2015. He's got all the makings of a breakout star. He's got bravado and the cash to back it up. If he really runs, he won't have any trouble finding supporters. As he puts it, the Obama administration's worst nightmare. Who can argue with him? Okay, so let's go back to the original tweet that Ben Shapiro had, where he made two separate assertions. We have already established that assertion number one, Trump was a fringe character for nearly the entirety of the Obama presidency, was a lie. He wasn't a Republican figure until he ran. Well, of course, Ben Shapiro in 2011 certainly thought otherwise. But that, of course, was only 5 years earlier from the time that he ran. Then the second assertion that Ben Shapiro makes is that you can't name a single major elected Republican official during Obama's presidency who challenged the legitimacy of his presidency. Well, let's go through it, shall we? Do you have those other tweets? Do you have the Mark Meadows video? Where Mark Meadows, and you know who Mark Meadows is, right? One of the top Republicans, the chair of the Freedom Caucus. Do you have the Mark Meadows stuff? We will pull that up right worth. There is a lot of folks, apparently, who were Republican leaders who questioned Barack Obama's legitimacy as president. Let's start with Mark Meadows back in 2012. Do we have that video? Brendan? It was in that thread. Yep. Here it is. Sorry.
He's also moving the goalposts, right, to try to define Trump of being a Republican figure.
Hold on. I'm sorry. Say again?
He's also moving the goalposts to try to define Trump out of being a quote-unquote Republican figure when he defines it as a major elected Republican official, right? Like, you don't have to be an elected official to be a Republican figure.
There's absolutely no version of this where it's in that thread, the Ben Shapiro thread, right here. Scroll down. People came in and put it in there. Go ahead. Here's Mark Meadows.
So it seemed like this was settled. During the meeting. What are you learning now?
Yeah, Anderson, certainly some new scrutiny over things that Mark Meadows has said in the past. This is first and foremost something that he said 7 years ago back in 2012 about then President Barack Obama. It was something at the time that was quite controversial and it was reported on by many outlets. But certainly given that very emotional back and forth and high profile back and forth at the Cohen hearing today, it certainly is getting a fresh look today. Here's first what Mark Meadows said back in 2012.
What we're going to do is take back our country. 2012 is the time that we're going to send Mr. Obama home to Kenya or wherever it is. We're going to do it.
We also had multiple U.S. senators question Barack Obama's legitimacy as president. I'm trying to find this thing now. I can't find it in the goddamn notes. We had Shelby from Alabama, Mark Meadows. There were dozens of these people who had done it. So number two on his assertion is also wrong. Trump was a Republican figure. And there were plenty of elected Republicans who also failed.
Richard Shelby, who's a prominent U.S. senator, said in 2009, well, his father was Kenyan. He said he was born in Hawaii, but I haven't seen any birth certificate. You have to be born in America to be president, he told constituents. I think, the senior Republican on the Intelligence Committee.
I mean, there were so many. Who else? There was others. I had that list. I don't know where it went. Where is it? Here we go. I can't see it. I don't know where you're sending me. Oh. All right, I can't get at it. I can't see where. Oh, here we go.
Jim
Mark Meadows, Marsha Blackburn, Louis Gohmert, Blake Farenthold, Tom Coburn, James Inhofe, Jason Chaffetz, Sarah Palin, Michael Burgess, Alan West. Half those people ran for president as a Republican. So,
to be fair, none of them are as prominent Republican figures as Trump.
You know what my favorite thing is? Is when you watch Ben Shapiro being fed his lunch to him. What he does after that is he starts tweeting maniacally about many other topics to bury this stuff as far as he can in his timeline. But the idea that, yes, here is in Las Vegas, where Mitt Romney accepts the endorsement from Donald Trump.
To this country that we all love.
Now pause it. Now wait a second. I also want to just preface it with this. If you look in the corner of the television, there's 3 letters there. The letters are PBS. There are plenty of times where a politician goes around and gets endorsements from people that barely make the local news. But when Mitt Romney went to kiss the ring of this non-Republican figure, apparently, who Ben Shapiro wanted to be president in 2012, it made it onto PBS.
He's smart. He's sharp. He's not going to allow bad things to continue to happen to this country that we all love. So, Governor Romney, go out and get him. You can do it.
That was a nice hand pull there. Yeah, I noticed that too.
There are some things that you just can't imagine happening in your life. This is one of them. Being in Donald Trump's magnificent hotel and having his endorsement is a delight. I'm so honored and pleased to have his endorsement. And of course, I'm looking for the endorsement of the people of Nevada.
Yeah, there you go.
Gotta praise the hotel.
Who is that guy? What is he doing there? You would think that it's such a part.
Isn't he part of the resistance in the Senate? Has anybody heard Mitt Romney's name mentioned anything? Right.
I was actually saying in the context of 2012, why would you have such a bizarre, obscure, non-Republican affiliated figure for such a major endorsement?
So Ben Shapiro takes it again on the chin. I can't wait for the next New York Times think piece on his. We'll get another profile of Ben Shapiro. Oh my God.
He's brilliant.
All right, let's go back to Fox and Friends. They are Brian Kilmeade, what the hell is wrong with the Jews? What is wrong with the Jews? Brian Kilmeade wants to know.
You talked to evangelicals. Many of them went to the polls and voted for the conservative, which was Donald Trump in the last election, because of what he would do for judges, because of his pro-life stance, and because of his pro-Israeli stance. Mm-hmm. It's important to a lot of Christians, or most Christians around the world, for us to support Israel.
But stunningly,
Pause it. Okay, I will tell you this. She is right. That is probably the best analysis I've ever seen from Ainsley Earhart. The part about the whole Christian support for Israel, incidentally, bad news for some of us Jews.
It's part of a bigger plan.
Y'all have chicken emporiums in Jerusalem?
My understanding is 2/3 of the Jews get sent to hellfire, and 1/3 gets to sit on the right-hand side of God.
Do I get an offer on the right-hand side of God?
I have I will cop to having submitted a form explaining that I have eczema and that hellfire.
But you don't vote Republican, man.
It irritates my eczema significantly.
I voted for Rudy Giuliani because I was concerned about crime, which you could interpret as a pro-Christian vote. So I would like to be...
I did not vote for Giuliani.
I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about more plausible Jewish entrants on the right. You're going to hell, dude. You're not making it. You are. They don't care about your eczema.
Oh, no. You can put in requests.
I'm sure you can.
Like with testing.
Anybody can put in requests.
You can put in tests.
But not anybody gets on the right side.
But let's see it. But Brian Kilmeade, well, you can't believe it. It's like, I get it why the Christians support, but where are the Jews?
A lot of Christians, or most Christians around the world, for us to support Israel.
But stunningly, most Democrats support. the majority of the American Jewish support goes to Democratic candidates. President Trump only got 24%, when President Bush 43 and this president have been the better allies to Israel.
I think that's starting to change. You're totally right. Historically, that's been the case, but the true colors are starting to show.
Incidentally, that's not starting to change. In fact, every single election cycle, we are told that that's starting to change. And guess what? It has not changed. In fact, there is no group of people in the country who have changed less in terms of their voting patterns over the past, 50, 60 years. I love how Kilmeade's like, wait, how am I going to say this so it doesn't sound like I'm dishing on the Jews?
Jews are so dumb. I mean, they're awesome.
No, wait a second.
But they're dumb. I don't get it. Don't get me wrong. They're very smart. They make a lot of money, but they vote in a dumb way.
What's also like, you wonder as he's saying this stuff and trying to formulate it in such a way that's not going to be a sound that he thinks is going to sound offensive. He's going to step in something. You wonder if there isn't a moment in his brain where it just like clicks in and like, wait a second. We've been sitting here talking about how criticism of Israel is anti-Semitic, but why does the majority of Jews, never mind just support Democratic candidates, but also support the idea of holding Israel to account? Why would that be? That doesn't make any sense. You wonder if like just in a flash, just like there's like a little hiccup, like, the thing that makes you like do this while you're sleeping. You think you're going to fall. Like if that happens in his brain here, let's just go back.
He occasionally has sort of woke takes.
Yeah, sometimes. I think sometimes he may
that
just,
was, remember with Lindsey Graham where he's like, well, we're talking about nuking the mullahs, not all Iranians. That's not cool.
He's afraid to say American Jews here too, which is hilarious.
For us to support Israel.
But stunningly, most Democrats support, the majority of the American Jewish support goes to Democratic candidates. President Trump only got 24%.
Yeah. See Ainsley's just like, I honestly don't care about any of this, but I would just say be careful because
be careful, Brian.
They're real touchy about that.
Red alert, careful.
I got some chicken salad to eat. I want to have another one of those meetings.
Have you ever seen one of them try to return a chicken salad? Oh boy.
And Heggs' I love Heggs' reaction, which is sort of like, wait, we're not supposed to mention that. It's changing.
Jexodus.
Right. I
think it's really changing. I mean, have you ever heard of Jexodus?
I think Hegseth is by far the most likely to just be like, more kikes are going to vote for us. Definitely. It's just like, I thought he's totally Anchorman. I thought that was a great segment. Everybody else is looking at him like, what did you just say?
Now, because, part of the problem is that Hegseth has to maintain. So we watch one clip where, Kilmeade sort of comes to the revelation and either is just very worried about saying it in the wrong way or just actually has a revelation that makes him stumble a little bit when he's talking about Jews voting for Democrats and therefore not supportive of Israel. It just makes it very hard to do the whole criticism of Israel is anti-Semitic thing. Hegseth jumps in to say, wait, that's changing. And part of the reason why Hegseth had to do that is because here's Hegseth right now making the argument that, Talib Omar, when they attack Israel, it's, of course, it's terrorism.
The point that they made there exposes their agenda. And then they, as you said, Brian, they went out to say they're not a democracy and not an ally. I mean, they are our strongest ally in the Middle East, bar none. They're the only democracy in the Middle East surrounded by countries that want to kill them. And the organization we're going to get to in a second that was going to sponsor this trip is supposed to be in charge of Palestinian democracy. You know that 97% of Palestinians live under the Palestinian Authority, which has not held an election for a decade, because if they held an election, Hamas would win, just like they did in the Gaza Strip. Hamas is a dedicated terrorist.
He was going to go on to say Hamas is a dedicated terrorist organization.
It's like we are actually no longer a dedicated one. We haven't been dedicated for 4 years now.
It's actually true.
No, literally, Hamas has been significantly less dedicated since 2006.
All right, folks, now for the moment that you've been waiting for. Look, there's a lot of support that we've had from all sorts of communities out there saying, why doesn't Dave Rubin actually sit down with Sam and discuss some ideas? Why does Steve Crowder keep ducking Sam Seder all the time. And we're going to have, when we get to September, we're going to roll that out. I'm not exactly sure when we're going to do it, but sometime in September. We're going to roll out some of the examples of Steven Crowder over the past year or so, ducking debates. But people are getting sick of it. Even people that you wouldn't imagine. I give you Tomi Lahren from, is she still on the Blaze TV or Blaze or wherever?
Oh, she's definitely not on the Blaze anymore.
Oh, no,
her
right.
abortion
That's
stuff.
right. She's off the Blaze. But Tomi Lahren, here she is.
Hey, Tomi Lahren here. So I wanted to say to Dave, Steven, and others, stop being cowards and debate Sam already. My goodness, get to it. Those are my final thoughts. God bless, take care, and remember, get your debate on.
There you go. There you go, folks.
Tammy has spoken.
There he goes. Tomi Lahren, Tammy, how does she?
Hey, Tomi Lahren here. So I wanted to say to Dave, Steven, and others, stop being cowards and debate Sam already. My goodness, get to it. Those are my final thoughts. God bless, take care, and remember, get your debate on.
My
get your
goodness,
debate on.
get to it. I love it.
Now, we should probably just say that at Dr_ill there did pay Tommy to say this on the platform Cameo, where you can play these sort of minor celebrities to,
I'm sorry. Wait. Okay. So, do you think, Matt, that Tomi Lahren is just going to say something just for the money?
No, never mind. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, yeah, she got $60 to say that. But if she didn't believe it, do you think that she would say that for $60?
You're right.
Right?
I doubt it. I mean, I think there's a lot of cynicism in this business, but I think
she needs, when she says, Dave, Steven, go debate Sam, she means it.
I think it's a sign that the masculine right is losing the females.
It's true. It's true. It really is true.
She's not that hard up for $60, okay, guys? She would never say something that she doesn't believe in.
Of course not. I mean, cucks unite, right? Like, I mean, really appreciate
If you want to impress Tommy or Tommy, yeah, just don't be like Crowder. Be like Majority Report.
There you go.
Be a man.
There you go.
Sack up and debate.
I think we gotta. That thing's got to be dispersed far and wide, folks. Yeah, it really is. Really is sad. You're getting called out.
Called out by your women.
Yep. Real problem.
She's at Fox Nation now, so tell her thanks.
Thanks, Fox Nation. Thanks, Tommy. Thanks, Fox Nation. One love.
All right, let's go to some phone calls here. Calling from a 512 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? 512. 512. Let's try someone else. Calling from 308. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Sam, it's Kowalski from Nebraska.
Kowalski from Nebraska. How was the campaign, Kowalski?
I technically haven't officially started it. People around here don't like campaigns until after harvest. God, that sounds rednecky. But just heading to lunch, and I just wanted to give you guys a heads up that Philosophy Tube this Friday is going to be doing basically a live stream reading the entire works of Shakespeare to raise money for suicide prevention in the UK. Figured that'd be a pretty worthy cause for people seeing how watch, and just thought I'd share that with you guys today. So
when does that start? On Friday?
Friday, 7 o'clock p.m. UK time. Philosophy Tube. I forget what service he's using, but I'm sure you can look it up. He had a short little video on it. So.
All right, that sounds pretty good. All right, Philosophy Tube. Folks can check it out. The complete works of Shakespeare?
Yes, which is like a 600-page novel or something like that. It's pretty staggering, but seems like it's going to be pretty fascinating to watch.
Isn't that going to take
that'll take multiple days?
Multiple days.
Yeah.
He said it should take 64 hours.
Okay.
Oh,
yeah.
all right.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. That's amazing. All right. Well, I will definitely tune in. I appreciate the call.
All right. You guys have a good one.
Have a good harvest.
Take care.
There's some farm implements in the background, I think.
Yeah, indeed. Calling from a 585 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, this is John from Western New York.
Did you say Josh from Western New York?
John.
John, what's on your mind, John?
I had a couple things I was hoping to talk about. One's healthcare, and the other one's like New York politics.
Okay. Let's talk healthcare.
All right. I had kind of reached out to John from San Antonio.
Yeah.
In regards to some kind of like, there's a lot of talk about obviously healthcare, and not much talk about where the savings is to like normal people. So, we are talking about how a lot of normal people don't get the idea of what you're going to save because, it's part of your employment, Anyway, but those people are not going to have to pay all the taxes that they're paying currently, whether it be they own their own homes, all that money that they pay for insurance through that avenue isn't going to have to be paid. Like, for teachers, policemen,
I'm sorry.
all that money.
I don't understand what you're saying, John.
Okay, so say, like you're, sorry, I'm a little nervous. So like property taxes, right? Goes to pay for schools and teachers and all that.
Right.
Well, Medicare for all, right? That's, that amount isn't going to be paid through that avenue. So, right, like 6% of, say, your school taxes is not going to be there anymore because that's going to be paid federally.
No. The taxes, the proposals have nothing to do with property taxes. Your property taxes are going to stay the same. You're going to pay an additional tax for your health insurance, and you're not going to pay anything in terms of premiums or co-pays. You're not going to have any deductibles. It's conceivable that your pay may go up at work in certain circumstances. Conceivable, because all employers are going to be off the hook to pay for their health insurance. They're going to have an increase in taxes, but whatever that delta is, the difference between that, eventually, I think in some instances, workers should have the ability to capture some of that that difference. But largely, the savings. Largely, the savings for your average American is going to be in the no copays, no deductibles, no caps, and your insurance is going to cover more things. You're not going to have to worry about being in a plan or out of a plan or any of that.
Well, my point was, you're saying that the employer doesn't have to cover that, so there's going to be a savings there, right?
Well, there is going to be a savings there, but it's going to depend because, it's sort of going to depend on what their outlay is because they're also going to be taxed.
Well, the federal government is one of the largest employees, so that's what I'm saying. Like, there's not going to be that cost to teachers, policemen, who all get, basically federally subsidized health insurance now, where instead of right now we're paying it to private agencies, so they're basically they're making 20% extra, where you would save that with a Medicare for all system where you're paying what?
Okay.
8% or
Oh, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. So you're saying that municipalities, places that hire government workers, they're going to have savings on, they're still going to cost money, but yes. Well, that's where efficiencies are going to, I see what you're saying though. But because the government is paying that 20% delta, that 20% profit that private insurance gets, you're saying that is going to be a savings that's going to accrue to municipalities. And Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't contemplated that. I'd have to look into that more. Because I don't know, frankly, like,
and that filters down.
I don't know what the health plans are for employees of, let's say, teachers in New York City. And I don't know who administers those, but I would imagine they are, the New York City probably negotiates with some type of private insurance company, and then they insure these people, and the insurance company. Now, it's conceivable, like when you start doing large employers, the insurance company is basically just charging an administrative fee. They're not actually the insurers. The entity itself actually does the insurance. And so I don't know. I have to look into that. There may be savings there, though. I see what your point is. I haven't heard much about it, but I will look into that. Appreciate
it. Seems like a John from San Antonio a question to look through.
It's an interesting question.
Pretty good.
Yeah, I could say that again.
Appreciate the call.
Hey, can I get one more?
Oh.
Oh, that was cold-blooded.
Sorry about that. Sorry.
That was cold-blooded.
Sorry.
You should pay Tommy Lauren to get Sam not to hang up on you.
Calling from a 606 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Who's this?
Okay. All right. This is Joe from Richmond, Virginia.
Hey, Joe. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Just getting some dinner made for later today. But I wanted to make a comment about a subject. I think you all talked about this last week. See, I'm a Kentucky native, and I lived there most of my life. I've lived in both the rural and the urban parts of the state. And this concerns Mitch McConnell in 2020. I hate to break it to everybody, but get ready to blame the electorate, because the story is that everybody hates Mitch McConnell in Kentucky. Nobody likes him. You won't be able to find anybody who says, I love Mitch. But when it comes time to go to the voting booth, the Republicans in all the rural areas will do exactly as they're told. They'll go over and they'll pull the lever for him every time. And the reason they do this is because the Kentucky Democratic Party is frankly a pathetically myopic organization. And you can see this just by looking at Amy McGrath's campaign launch, where she's trying to portray herself as being pro-Trump, because I think this is a really clever strategy of trying to confuse the voters as to who the real Republican is in the race.
Right.
But
I mean, look,
it's just a matter of, are you gonna pick the original Republican, or are you gonna pick the Diet Coke Republican? They pick the real one every time.
I don't know. My perspective
I just want everybody to be prepared.
My perspective about Kentucky is just like anything that just keeps him busy and and draws resources is probably helpful in that respect. We're going to end up doing a pickup. Probably my guess is Arizona, Maine. Texas seems not impossible, but I would say unlikely. But I think Arizona and Maine, there's going to be pickups. I think we're not going to like the senator from Arizona. I think the senator from Maine will end up being sort of like a Angus King type of guy, probably, which I think is going to be fine. But yeah, Kentucky, I think it's tough. It's tough, but...
Well, that doesn't sound like blaming the electorate. That sounds like blaming the terrible Kentucky Democratic Party.
I mean, yes, they are terrible, but there's a way to break through to them. And I think if we had a Bernie Sanders at the top of the ticket, and you had a congressional candidate and, for our case, a Senate candidate who would echo that same message, you can undermine.
What about the talk show host?
The roots of Republican support.
What about that?
Because
Isn't there a prominent...
Wait.
Isn't there a prominent sports talk show host that's thinking about making that run? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
What about that guy?
I know who you're talking about. I hope he runs. And he can challenge Amy McGrath, but the establishment is going to be 400% behind her.
Right.
Just like they were when, a big political mover and shaker in the state, Jerry Lundergan, supported his daughter, Allison Lundergan Grimes, to face Mitch McConnell last time, and they pushed everybody out with money.
I mean, it seems...
And I think this is a familiar story to everybody.
Absolutely. I mean, it seems like it tracks with like a more intense version of our understanding of the electorate generally and how Trump won, which is that the rabid Republicans who are mostly not poor, they're mostly rich or small business owning people who always vote Republican, they come out in full force. And then the people who would be voting for Democrats are either they're poor, they're immiserated, and they are being suppressed as voters, both explicitly with unjust laws or more in more subtle ways, like we're beaten down under Democrats, we're beaten down under Republicans. Why bother showing up to vote? Like the main predictor of whether or not someone votes, the strongest predictor is their income. And Kentucky is a state beset by poverty. So it makes sense in Kentucky that the primary turnout would be among Republicans, right?
Well, isn't the other irony,
though? Turnout during the election of Matt Bevin was like in the low 20%. It was terrible. Wow. And I think that is part of the key to Republican success. That's definitely true. And let me just sneak in one question, and then I can, let you guys discuss this more. And that is, what do you guys think of this particular argument for health care as far as, say, Bernie or Elizabeth Warren pushing this? Is that when people say it can't work in the United States because we have so many people versus other countries that have single payer, I guess, what do you guys think of this as a retort? It's like, so economies of scale don't exist suddenly when we're talking about healthcare now?
Right.
So that's my question.
Yeah, well,
I'll
in
let
fact,
you guys go, and
that
you-
is
you
the
guys
whole
can
point
discuss it.
of, the savings comes from, frankly, that dynamic.
Yeah, put on your Andrew Yang math hat when you dish that one up.
There was an old Rand Paul clip where he accidentally made that point in a Senate hearing where he's just like, wouldn't it make sense the pool was larger? And then somebody else, I don't remember, it might have been Bernie, was like, yeah, there is a very large pool that we could have for healthcare that's available.
Let's go to the phone. Calling from an 818 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Sam. It's Dave from Jamaica. Again.
Dave from Jamaica. How are you, Dave?
I'm going to do some quick plugs for MR adjacent people. The Dissident Peasant, I also heard you're a running mate for the Libertarian ticket, or is that fake news? But
I think that's self-appointed on his part. I haven't.
It was Biden style. He floated it himself.
It's a libertarian approach to building a ticket.
So he's done a very interesting article on the brief history of the Second Amendment. So lots of ideas there. So I would suggest people go to Patreon, support him. It's good stuff. Also, from the TMBS Discord, Kentucky Fried Comrade from the In Too Deep podcast is debating Jesse Lee Peterson. So that would be interesting. I forget the date, but you guys could get details on that.
Is there anybody that doesn't debate Jesse Lee Peterson now? Oh,
Yep,
man. Maybe I
he's
shouldn't have
taking
passed
all-
on that. Like,
Taking all covers.
Apparently.
And of course,
every single human being talks to Jesse Lee Peterson.
Wow.
I don't think I don't think I have tolerance for that.
When are you going to do it, Dave? When are you on deck?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you, Mike.
When are you on deck to debate Jesse, Dave?
I don't know. I'm halfway to never, I suppose. But also, I think last plug, master debater and man with largest head, Mike from PA, is doing his Twitch stream. Very successful.
Good.
So I would suggest people to jump on that one. Other than that, I think I'm almost done with plugs. Oh yeah, Literary Hangover and Antifada, and
There
of
you go.
course
Why, thank
TMBS as well.
You might as well throw in the majority
you guys
report while you're at it. I mean,
Well, I'm on the majority report. Plug in the majority report while the majority report.
it never
going on might
hurts.
be a little-
Never hurts. I do it.
You stoked for tonight's TMBS?
Of course, always.
You going to call in? We're going to
Very-
talk later, Dave?
Very nice. Nice of you to say, Dave.
I'll
You
try.
didn't- wasn't necessary, but it's nice.
I'll try to. But I have one last question to ask everybody on the show, and you guys can respond afterwards. Do you love black people?
Every single one.
There's a couple.
I love black people.
Amazing.
Amazing.
Hi, Dave. I appreciate the call.
Later.
Later. Amazing.
Amazing.
Isn't that's what Jesse
Amazing.
Peters says, right?
Amazing. Well, amazing.
Calling from a 367 area code.
What
Who's
is
this?
a man?
367.
Hello?
Hello? Hello?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes. Who's this?
Hi, I'm David calling from Hungary. I'm a big fan.
Oh, well, thank you for calling. What's on your mind, David?
First, nice to talk with you guys. First time caller, or I think second time caller for... yeah, okay, I might just get to it. So first of all, I'll ask two questions. You said by ending of October, you expect that Joe Biden will be third in the polls.
Yeah.
And I just want to say that people should understand that even if Joe Biden is third in the national polls, which I personally don't think is going to happen, my personal belief is at the end of Super Tuesday next year, Bernie, Kamala Harris, Buttigieg is going to be over for them, because you got to understand, what's the worst case scenario for Joe Biden? He loses Iowa, he loses New Hampshire. In all the states, I checked all the polling on RCP average. He's still ahead in Georgia, Alabama, South Carolina, over Nevada, Mississippi. By the time Super Tuesday is over, he will still be the leader in delegates. So I just don't think that from your audience perspective, I think Biden is still overwhelmingly the favorite. People forget those Super Tuesday states. I remember last primary, Hillary Clinton got so many delegates from after Super Tuesday was basically over. So in my opinion, I believe that by Super Tuesday, we already know who the Democratic nominee is. And I sincerely believe that. And I think just look at the average of all the southern states. He's still comfortably ahead by
David,
10, 20 points.
Okay.
So what's your argument on that?
First off, I would say that, as we get closer, my prediction about him being third, I get a little bit more nervous about it, but I'm staying with it just because I'm going down with the ship. But the theory is this, that those leads in those later states are buoyed largely by older African-American voters in those states. And it is predicated upon what, frankly, his wife was pitching yesterday, which is that Joe Biden can win. There is no better refutation to the idea that Joe Biden can win than him losing in New Hampshire and Iowa. And if he loses in New Hampshire and Iowa, it's going to implicate those polls in a big way. It's going to influence, I should say, because you're looking at a snapshot, and it's predicated more than any other candidate. Joe Biden's support is founded on a belief that he can beat Donald Trump, that he is the best bet to beat Donald Trump. But if he loses, and if he does poorly in the debates, I believe his support is more sensitive to that than others, because
I get your
that's
point.
the argument.
That's a great point. But I also want people to, because I don't think a lot of people understand. Like, I have cousins in Atlanta and in Georgia in the U.S., and all of them, I was surprised, are voting for Biden. I told them all the policies. They still support Biden. In fact, they hate Kamala. Biden is their number one supporter. So I think
why do they hate Biden? Why do they support Biden? Did you ask them why?
Most of them say that they think he can win, and because of Obama. Right. I think a lot of people, especially, they don't.
Right, David.
They don't want the Democratic.
No, I get you. That's consistent with what I'm arguing. If he loses in Iowa and in New Hampshire, particularly if he comes in third in one of those places, it's gonna be tough, because he's gonna have to sell. Like, I can win, I just can't win in Iowa. And I just can't win in New Hampshire.
Let me put another question to you. Do you believe if Bernie Sanders doesn't win Iowa, he has a realistic path to the nomination? Can you realistically see Bernie Sanders beating Joe Biden in any of the southern states? Realistically. So isn't it Iowa or bust for Bernie Sanders right now, if we're being honest?
I think if he comes
Can he
in,
beat Biden in any southern state?
I think if he comes in close second in Iowa and he wins in New Hampshire, I think he's got a pretty good. I think he's got a pretty good shot. I mean, the one thing that you have to understand in terms of Sanders staying in the race, the idea that he would drop out after Super Tuesday, just not going to happen. He has the money. He's going to do well in California. He could win in California.
But I'm not talking about what's going to happen. I'm just talking about that I believe after Super Tuesday, the chances are very, very high that he will be ruled out of the nomination process.
All right.
That's what I feel.
Okay.
And I feel that you're all, you have to know that because
Your
I
phone's
think that there's a
breaking
lot
up,
of
David.
strong black support.
Well, we also have to
All right,
remember
I gotta let him go.
there's an X factor here that is very hard to measure because all of the polls are of likely voters, right? But the X factor is unlikely voters, people who don't normally vote, especially young people and poor people who might potentially come out for Bernie Sanders and skew the data in that way. We don't know yet if that's going to happen, but it happened for Jeremy Corbyn, and I think it could happen for Bernie.
Right. I mean, I think there's that's definitely there's a potential for that. Calling from a 206 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Emily from Brooklyn.
Hi, Emily. What's on your mind?
Hey, I have kind of a meta question, and since you've got a full house today, I'll open this question to everyone. I was wondering, what is the earliest thing you remember, like be it something you read or watched or something in the news, etc., that began to move your social and political views to the left? Like, what age did that happen for you, and what started that process?
Oh, geez.
The answer I
Good
usually
question.
give is I remember watching the run up to the war in Iraq, and especially this shock and awe thing is right when I got a TV in my room, and I remember watching it being like, oh, this is kind of weird. And then I think I was also listening to a lot of like radio out of Minneapolis, KFAN, the sports talk channel, but they also had a bunch of liberals on there, and it was basically that sort of era.
Yeah, I'm a little bit older than Matt, but the Iraq War definitely weighed heavily on my political development as well. I remember I was still in high school when I protested the Iraq War along with millions of other people across the country, and it didn't do anything. And I was like, wow, maybe our government isn't actually working the way it's supposed to. That combined with having to survive on my own in the world after college during the Great Recession made me feel pretty disillusioned with not just the Republican Party, but Obama and the Democrats as well. And combined with Occupy Wall Street made me think we need some more radical solutions if we're actually going to fix the problems in the world.
Michael is not here. What was the first? Will you just repeat it? The question?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, so yeah, just what was the earliest thing that you remember, like whether it was something you had like read or watched or something that was happening in the news that began to move your social and political views to the left?
The two things that come to mind is that just because of we had a decent sized backyard in Worcester, our neighbors down the street were committee chairman for McGovern. McGovern came to our house to campaign in the backyard when I was like 6. I don't think I knew the ideology, but I knew I was against Nixon at that point. And then I think just stories, maybe my dad was on the Human Rights or the Civil Rights Commission in Worcester, and just hearing those stories. I don't know. I don't know if there was I don't remember exactly beyond that. I don't know. That was it though. But Michael's not here. Good question. Appreciate the call.
Yeah, thanks guys. Have a good afternoon.
Bye-bye. I'd never really thought about that before. I feel like also maybe I was I associated with American Indians when I was a little kid. I don't know why. Not like I didn't. I mean, I actually had a counselor, I think, at a camp who was had some Native American. Can't remember exactly, but I was young. Then I got into I identified with Indians more than the cowboys. Not sure.
Also, I started dating a communist, and as everyone knows, I just want to be where the boys are.
There you go. Calling from a 201 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Jimmy from Jersey.
Jimmy from Jersey. What's on your mind?
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I'm calling in to talk about veganism. I think that it's the most important. I think that the animal rights movement is the most important movement of the century. I think it's essential to address public health, the climate crisis, and the animal cruelty crisis. I want to take a step back for a second. I do realize that I'm talking to somebody who is on a show that absolutely glorifies meat consumption. It's called Bob's Burgers. Should be called Bob's Dead Cows on a Bun.
Well, to be fair,
to
be fair, last night I had an Impossible Burger for the first time, and that was actually really good.
Yeah, I like them.
So I'm not aware that Bob's Burgers isn't a completely vegan burger joint, but I assume it's not. But yes, okay. But and to in my defense too, I understand that my character is not in any way affiliated with the restaurant. In fact, it's considered in some respects its nemesis. So.
Oh yeah, you're actually like the crusader, you know, health
true.
inspector.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's awesome that you tried an Impossible Burger, you know, and I realize I'm kind of calling in because you guys have done some great discussion on this compared to other left-wing shows, and kind of like, you know, I guess I'd like to get you to talk the talk before walking the walk. I mean, walk the walk before talking the talk. So, yeah, I mean, after having an Impossible Burger, do you feel like, you know, that you want to make that transition towards a more plant-based diet, you personally?
Without a doubt. I mean, my feeling was like, I'm not ordering a burger here again anymore. My son likes to go to this burger place. Basically, I figured out because there's a TV there, and
Smart.
And now I make him sit with his back to the TV, and he'll hug me, and then just actually use that as an excuse of watching the TV. But I last night I was like, I'm not ordering a burger here again. I'm only going to get this, and I have to say, in terms of my red meat consumption, I've already made a conscious effort to cut down on that. I mean, I may have a steak 4 times a year now. And, you know, a burger, I don't know, another half dozen times a year, maybe. But the burger's done. But the tough part for me would be more like fish, and some chicken. But I you know, progressively I'm eating less and some pork, I guess, in the context of like sausage occasionally. But,
Well, we're the last generation that's even going to be able to eat fish, so that won't be a problem for very much longer.
right. The pescatarians, they're going to be self-correcting.
I'm a pescatarian currently. I was vegetarian from the age of 12 to 18, vegan from 18 to, I want to say, 32, and now I eat eggs and seafood a little bit in my diet. I will say that what you do on an individual level really doesn't matter that much in terms of the world. We're going to have to ramp down meat production by a lot if we want to save the planet. And this is one thing that I would hope people would vote to do if we ever take democratic control over production. And that, in that case, yes, people are going to need to be sold on less meat for everyone. But until that happens, your personal lifestyle choices, I mean, they're great for you. Like I just said, I don't eat most kinds of meat, but it's going to need to happen on the side of production rather than consumption in order to make a difference.
Yeah. So if I can respond to that, I very strongly disagree that what we do, doesn't matter, that it doesn't make a difference. I think it makes all the difference. I mean, like, if we're not going to change our habits, if we're not going to do anything, then how are we going to solve the problem? We're just going to wait for fish to go extinct. We need to do something, and we need to do what we can. And, speaking to somebody, who I'm really happy to know that, that you do things about this and that you were a vegan at one point. And I assume, there's a point where, you look at this stuff, you see what really happens. Because it's not just the climate stuff. It's an animal cruelty crisis, and like just looking at what happens to them and, letting yourself feel remorse for that. And, like I let myself cry about it. I feel remorse about it. It's a terrible thing that's happening to this whole planet. What we do just as a species, how we just use other species, however we see fit, being in that state of mind, which I'm sure you've been in before, I'm sure you've seen it before, there must have been a time where you had that state of mind and you knew that saying that, just saying, oh, what I do doesn't matter, like those excuses that people make for not being vegan, that they're bullshit, like we need to take responsibility for what we do. And we're the cause of this, each and every one of us,
I mean, I can only tell you that from the perspective of like having spent a decent amount of time living in a rural area, that there's there's another perspective that particularly people who farm have, and not necessarily like big farms, but I had neighbors up there. They'll buy 2 pigs, in the early spring, late spring, and then they'll slaughter them in October, and that'll be the food that they eat for the winter, or they'll shoot a deer, and that'll be the other meat that they have for the winter. There's people. You live on a farm, you see animals go at it with each other, kill each other sometimes. And you just get a sense of like, we're all just sort of living entities and we all end up back in the soil on some level. And it's just part of a cycle. I mean, I think.
Well, the difference between us and animals is that, we can think about this. We can, make the decisions and we can take responsibility for it. And, when animals kill each other, I mean, that is what they're supposed to do, in nature. That doesn't dictate, what we're supposed to do. What we're supposed to do is, make good decisions.
Well, but I mean, listen,
what I believe we're supposed to do
I'm sympathetic with your perspective, but how do you know what we're supposed to do?
Well, here's the thing. Like,
well, wait a second. I'm asking, I think everything you're saying in terms of the practical issues, I agree with. But how do you know what we're supposed to do as humans?
Well, that is an interesting question. I think that we decide what we're supposed to do.
Right.
So I don't know in like a metaphysical sense. I'm not like a religious person, but I think that, well, I could go at this instead of from a religious perspective, from a biological perspective. I think that if there is a God, he's telling us hardcore, you guys need to stop eating meat. It's a public health crisis too,
Well, wait a second, but wait.
Look at the biology of humans. There's nothing about our biology.
Well, wait a second.
That requires us to eat meat. We, anatomically, we don't have anything that even allows us to eat meat without using technology to cook it. We are physically herbivores.
I understand. There are plenty of animals that can eat meat and also non-meat. But I guess my point is, from a practical standpoint and from everything you're saying, but in terms of like what we're supposed to do, we don't know. And so my only thing I would say to you is that I think, like, on a practical level, I think Jamie's point, I think, is well taken, that, our individual habits are not what's going to, sort of necessarily be the change, but our individual habits certainly inform our politics and certainly inform the politics of other people. And we can bring about sort of a societal change on big questions like this, in terms of like our agriculture and our the way that we deal with these things. I would just say that, like, I think it's a trickier sell, frankly, and I don't think it's. I think it's a trickier sell to say about, like, what we are or are not supposed to do. What part of us are simply animals, and what part of us have the ability to rise above our animal instincts. But
yeah, the moral appeal is not going to be effective for the greatest number of people. Like, I share the goal of wanting people to eat less meat, for the animals, for health, for the planet. I think the most effective way to do that, and the most effective arguments for most people, will be that we need to have a habitable planet. Because when it comes down to morality, it's entirely subjective. Unless there's, like, everybody believes in the same moral system, everybody believes in the same, like, platonic ideals somewhere in the sky. Like, it's very hard to prove that something is immoral when it comes to something that has so little agreement, like animal rights.
Well, I think that I think it's just really important, just on the subject of environmentalism, because this is the number one cause of species extinction. We're using more land for it than we are for almost anything else, and I just think that, like, we're living in a mass extinction right now, and if we don't, as a species, and I mean, I'm not necessarily, I don't know how successful I'm going to be. I haven't practiced this. I don't know how successful I'm going to be in changing people's minds. But, it's important that that we as a species, if we're going to have an environmental movement, that people start to see all life on this earth as being valuable. People kind of start to realize that, we're all on this planet together.
I mean, look, we have a problem.
If we don't treat each other with respect, we're gonna kill ourselves.
I agree, but I mean, I have to remind you that 17 years ago, 15 years ago, we were killing tens of thousands of people. Ultimately, we killed hundreds of thousands of people. And if you walked around, I was a fully grown adult at this time, you walked around and asked people about it, nobody gave it a second thought. Nobody gave it a second thought. I mean, so there are limitations on a human's ability to give a crap about other people, and that is a reality. And it's also going to make it that much harder for them to give a crap about animals, which is why I say that in terms of achieving your ends, if they are strictly to save as many animal lives as possible, that making it about morality is probably the hardest route to go to get to that end, frankly. But all right, we're out of time. Interesting stuff, though. I appreciate the call.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye. All right, folks, gotta go. Got a little caught up a little bit later than I thought. We got a couple more IMs, but phone callers, we're going to have to say goodbye. We're going to, tomorrow, I think I really may just open up the lines at the beginning of the show. We have so many people hanging on. Maybe we'll just do an all phone call type of thing. Maybe a little bit of news in there too. You know what I mean? But we got so many people hanging on the line. All right, let me just do a couple IMs and we'll get out of here. Gregory from Oklahoma. Yesterday, I went from Beto O'Rourke rally in Norman, Oklahoma, which is about 50 minutes from where I lived. I was there early, but many people, including myself, couldn't get in because the venue was too small to hold everyone. Well, that's smart. I saw a lot of young people there, but this was Oklahoma University. The kids were assuming we were more higher middle class and not so much working class. Supposedly, Cory Booker is supposed to come here next, and I'm going to try and go see him too. Give us a report. A Square. Sam, thanks for the Social Security potential cuts alert. Tweet that, please, on 1619 brouhaha. For many, including non-majority reporters, 1619 will be a re-education. But many of the themes covered, like plantation, is the model for ruthless capitalism. Folks, if you're not lucky like me to earn real American history, your public schools or college, check out the archives of Majority.fm and TMBS for exploration and deep discussion of race and slavery. Gracias. Waterboat from Kashmir. I'm honestly sorry for messaging about Kashmir on a near daily basis, but Kashmiris have no voice, and I'm holding a candle here. At some point soon, if Kashmiris feel no one is listening to them, they'll pick up guns. Remember the name of the besieged town of Sora in Kashmir. This is where Modi's massacres will begin. I appreciate the updates. I hope you continue with them. Communist Dolphin, did you see or have you talked about Rogan's 10-minute defense of Jordan Peterson explaining he's not alt-right and unfairly maligned? No, I have not. I will probably, hopefully avoid, but we'll see. Raving protester, I noticed Matt taking a lot of days off recently, Sam. I think he's slipping. And I'd like to be your new Matt. I grew up in Vermont. I eat bagels every day of my life. And I host a podcast focused on 19th century female writers of color. I've used YouTube since I was 5, and I can SEO like a mother bleeper. Please tell me where I can send my resume. James or Matt 3.0. MajorityReporters@gmail.com, or, of course, via ZipRecruiter.
A lot of scabs in our audience.
Chriso, I became a member 5 years ago today. It was my birthday, and it is today. Shofar, please. You got it. And the final I am of the day. Do you know anyone who's voting for Biden in the primary? It may just be in my anecdotal circle, but I know no one is supporting Biden. They're all over the map, but not for Biden. I'll line the different Dem and Invisible groups I follow. Same thing. Warren, Bernie, Harris, Mayor Butt.
Well, you won't find him in the Indivisible group.
Is there an embarrassed Biden voter like there was an embarrassed Trump voter? Where are these people? See you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth